Rain.
It's a weed.
But so we're going to speak today a little more about your story, and I have some questions that I want to ask you. So, is there anything you want to start out by you feel like you need to say, or that you?
No, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Let me just start by saying this. We are seeing now currently in South Africa that the ANC is on the path of a split. It's going to be split in all probability before December into two parts. The Ramaphosa faction and the rural, they call themselves the rural faction under Jacob Zuma. Julius Malema is going to leave before December as well, the EFF, to head the rural section because he sees himself as a future president. Floyd Shivambu will become the president of the EFF, and they will support the rural faction. They're trying to push for a takeover. On the other side, Cyril Ramaphosa will in all probability lose his presidency to Didi Mabuza with the support of Paul Mashatile.
Right, and which is not good.
Well, look, whichever option it goes, nothing is good for the country because it's all about money. The money people are behind everything. But the main thing is, my view is very simple. At this stage, the Americans and the Britons and the Germans and the French must take responsibility for the mess in this country. Yes, the National Party did screw up, and I mean the National Party should in 1967 already have taken the road of incorporating all the black people into a system. In the early 1990s, the deputy governor of the Central Bank of Japan visited South Africa. And he said to F.W. Clark, you cannot give one man, one vote. You must have a qualified democracy. If you don't have matric, you only get the vote once you're 26 or 24. I told you before that even prisoners in South Africa have the right to vote. I mean, you're supposed to lose all your civil rights the moment you go to prison. At this stage, prisoners do have a greater amount of civil rights than the person outside. And this is the big thing is...
Right, and they can actually become government officials.
Exactly. Anything is possible. We know there were investigations into, for instance, the city of Tshwane, whereby people with criminal records would go to the old Rondalia building, and officials from the city of Tshwane would expunge their records from the system so they could become metro police. So criminals are now suddenly as clean as anything else. And there's also been a big move amongst senior ANCs to clear their names on the internet. They pay millions to Russian hackers to clear their names and to make it look as if they're lily white. But the main thing is, what does it mean? Yeah, what does it mean if the ANC splits? The Cyril Ramaphosa faction, in all probability, will have to align itself with the DA in order to have a working structure and to make sure that they have the majority of the vote. Now, the DA in itself has been a total mess. We have seen it in Tshwane in the last week with all the strikes after the senior Tshwane officials were supposed to get an increase of 18%, which after very disruptive strikes have now been withdrawn. But wherever the DA came into power, nothing was done, or very little was done against the fraud and the corruption of the ANC. And the situation is because the DA took a leaf from the book. And I think when one scratches deeper, you will find a lot of horror stories. Torrid, horrid, whichever way you want to look at it. People always blame the ANC. But always behind the black ANCs, there's a white dude. There's normally a Jew boy, my brethren, I'm very disappointed to say, because it's all about money. And there's always a a couple of Afrikaners who think they are very clever. Real brown-nosing, gatkruipende is the word. You speak Afrikaans. But brown-nosing characters with no backbone. They can only do whisper campaigns. Let me give you an example. Yeah, I'm listening.
I was just saying, it seems that the world almost has a hand in this, you know, in pushing the ANC. Europe, you know, it's insane the amount of people involved in keeping people that are incapable of doing anything more than what has been done, which is nothing but destroy, in power. It's like they want to keep them in power. Why?
It's about money, Brandy. When you look at the Swedes and the Danish, remember these were the two countries who had the most collaboration with Nazi Germany during the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
They're also the people who gave sanctuary to the ANC, and they're also the people who are going out to get the most out of democratic South Africa. I mean, if you look at Sweden with the Grippens, from South, how many Grippens are actually operational at this stage in South Africa? Nobody talks, but in order to get a Gripen up in the air, they have to actually cannibalize parts from some other Grippens. Things have been mothballed. You know, when the Grippens were sold to South Africa, they sold 2 test beds at the time at 170 million rand each. That was when the rand was standing 8 to the dollar. Today it's standing at 15 to the dollar, to give you an example. But on the test beds, only the Swedes were allowed to work on it. No South Africans. Germany, when Germany sold the corvettes to South Africa wanted 2. So Krupp Tyson said to them, you can't have 2, you must have 4. Because our people need jobs. If you don't do that, we will boycott your imports, such as from your fruit and vegetable and your wines. So South Africa ended up buying 4 corvettes, for which it didn't have the crews or the facilities. So tell me again, you want to talk about corruption of the ANC in South Africa? Europe is equally complicit. I mean, I've spoken about the role of the British in the past to quite a large extent. Yes, it is true. At one stage in the 80s and the 70s, it had been said that a country that was not colonized could not go forward. And interesting enough, they used Thailand as an example, a country who had never been colonized. But look, where's Thailand before? Because they grasped new technology, they understood it, and it's like launching of a rocket. So you didn't have to be colonized to go forward. But in any case, South Africa had a very good infrastructure. The financial system is very well. And South Africa ties into the international financial system, despite being a teeny-weeny midget on the scope of economic participation. And this is why South Africa has become a haven for people such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. There are 49 camps in South Africa. The largest one is at a place called, very near to Humansdorp in the Eastern Cape. It's called Assegaai-Bos. And what's interesting is that whenever the American satellites came over from their defense intelligence, all training, that's a Harley Davidson, by the way, going by, all of the training would stop for that time. All of the training would stop. In other words,
that's crazy.
Why are the American systems compromised? The other camp is at Camperdown, outside Pietermaritzburg. There's one in Somerset West, Strand, in the Cape. There's another one just outside Pretoria.
And they train.
They do train.
Not mistaken.
They come here in groups of 10 to 20. And they walk around They come into the shopping centers. They walk around in their mufti with that beards of theirs and in the clothes which they're wearing outside of. They don't come in jeans and slacks or whatever. You can see that. And by the way, they don't speak English. Yeah, and they actually smell. You smell them. So they don't even care about it. They've got a translator.
Yeah, I was attacked for saying this.
Of course you will be attacked.
I was attacked for saying. I was basically called a liar, and I posted some evidence of proof, that they've been there for a good while. But what really floored me is I had someone that is South African in the comments of the video that I made speaking on this, where I said that ISIS has safe haven there and they train, and they said, just leave them alone. They don't attack us. Just leave them alone. And I thought, the bigger picture to this is to bring attention to these things that going on there that can't be ignored if enough people know, right? And this is one of those things. It's a means to an end. And it just blew my mind that some people couldn't understand this. And they were like, just don't say anything.
Brandy, this is what happened in Kenya. This is what happened in Kenya. All these people, Al-Shabaab, have moved into Kenya. All the Somalis, although they've stuck to their own type in the neighborhoods, they've mingled with the other people. And that's why you will remember the past 5 years, the attacks being carried out on the malls, the bomb blasts, etc. That's why the Kenyans are so afraid of attacking Somalia, because they don't know when a bomb will go off in their own neighborhoods. And this is a fallacy. Right. Remember, France used to accommodate the Ayatollah during the time of the Shah. Remember the bombings in Paris? The point is, if you allow people in, at one or other stage there is going to be friction. Believe me, innocent people are going to die.
Yeah.
But the question is, because, after the ANC came into power, the first thing that happened was the drug lords from all over Africa pounced on these people. The late Chief Twete was implicated in bringing the Tanzanian drug lords into the Western Cape. I mean, everywhere you turn, things, because people come in with an idea, they come in as good people, and they get corrupted in no time. They get corrupted in no time, because you know why? Because they have nothing. The price of corrupting them is much cheaper than corrupting somebody like me. My price is $1 billion, and if you can match it, I'll run, because I know I won't live very long. But the point is, everybody has a price. People will say to you, I don't have a price. Everybody has a price. Doesn't matter what the tipping point is or how you get to that point. So the situation, they are in South Africa. I mean, the Dangors and the Dockrats are on the watch list in the United States. But the big thing is...
And we know they're there.
Yeah, of course.
In my country. We know they're there.
Now we have the reports of Hamas in Canada and in America. I mean, Hamas, according to information I received, was shown the Dillon minigun in the possession of the South African Police Services. And when I asked for the visitors register, they refused to give it to me. Now, I mean, they also showed it apparently to the Iranians. Now, you can call it lucky or whatever. The day they attached the minigun, they took it from a safe at Special Forces in Walmanstal, the training center. And I wasn't present because it was all fake affidavits or whatever. And the magistrates, the legal system in South Africa, is fatally compromised. The magistrates didn't do their work. They sat down with the people of the Hawks, and I mean, I'm still looking for the minutes of those meetings to see what nonsense they spoke about me. But the fact is, when they took this gun, it was taken apart to be cleaned. They threw the bloody parts away. So, luckily, the gun cannot fire. It's a massive doorstop. So, in other words, if the gun could fire, I promise you, the Iranians would already have copied it. The Chinese, I know, have copied the minigun, but that was the one from Somalia, from Black Hawk Down. And and I mean, Hamas is in the market. They're stocking up. And this is, sorry.
So you just,
yeah?
I was going to say, you mentioned Canada, and you know, I have a friend that lives in Canada, and as you know, it's a mess there too, and they have allowed a lot of these Muslim immigrants to come in, and a lot are, I mean, they are terrorists. It's just the truth, what they are. And this person explained to me the other day what is being done there, and then nothing's being done about it. So they're burning these oil towns, right? Where the town people will have to leave. Their homes were burnt. So there was one instance, I don't know the name of the town, but Russia and someone else offered to come in and help put the fires out. And Justin Trudeau said no. And this person was saying that basically they're doing this in all of the oil towns, and so that all the locals have to leave, so that they're taking over, you know, and they're staying, so that they will have control, you know, slowly have control by controlling where the oil is, right? And that just, it blew me away that this is being allowed to take place.
Brandy, first of all, on the shale exploration and exploitation in Canada, the shale to oil, that was financed by Gaddafi. I don't know if you know about that. It was Gaddafi's money in it. Secondly, all these post-World War II liberals with their exaggerated human rights. This is where it comes in. Because remember, after the Second World War, especially during the 60s, 70s onward, people had forgotten what happened in the Arab world. They'd forgotten about the battles in North Africa. So the Arab world was left to its own devices. I mean, Queen Noor of Jordan said, but they've got 2 refugee camps in Jordan, each with 1 million inhabitants. I mean, come on. When you have people, so many people, you've got rising expectations. They've got cell phones, man. They've got new technology. They see what's happening. They see Big Mac burgers. They see 2-liter Coca-Colas. They see Mercedeses. They also want. It's human. It's human nature.
Yeah.
But the main thing is, I'll give an example of fraud and corruption. And as I say, as much as it's happening in South Africa, I blame the Western world. Because one, the Western world prescribed to South Africa what to do. Then we had the Scandinavians. Yes. This one woman was sitting with Treasury years ago, and they were talking about food security. She said, we don't care about the farmers. South Africa's got enough money to import food. And I looked at her and I said, where does the money come from? You idiot. You're an advisor from Denmark. But you see, it's all these people who tended not to be anything in their own countries, who suddenly became hotshot advisors to the ANC. That makes you wonder, where the hell do they stem? Where do they stem from? The problem with the South Africans, excuse me, the problems with the South Africans are they've been taught to grow up and not to question. When you look at the works of Alvin Toffler, the futurist writer, you're only part of the system. You're not supposed to question the system. You're not supposed to be a liberal thinker. You're not supposed to be in the vanguard. You're supposed to be a part of the mainstream. No questions. You are there to be a part of the workforce, to be exploited. For who? To hell with that, man.
It's a dogma.
Yeah, to hell with that. I mean, when these people try to frame me and a guy by the name of Gareth Nason, and I'll send you the documents from Dave's Arms, he was arrested on fake warrants. He was incarcerated for 6 days on fake warrants. By now, he's won 3 of his 4 cases, hands down, against the state. The 4th one is about damages.
Really?
And it's a lady by the name of Minke Erasmus. She's a Transvaal Erasmus, not related to me. Please, you must note there are 2 types of Erasmuses in this country. The red ones and the black ones. The black ones are from the Transvaal. The red ones are from the Karoo. In any case,
Okay.
his case have now been postponed 72 times. Have you ever heard about a case being postponed 72 fucking times? It's beyond comprehension. No. It's beyond comprehension. Now the main thing is, what I'm saying to him is, he must attack them. But he mustn't attack them by being the gentleman litigator. He must attack them in a sense which they do not understand. I've taken all my stuff to the Zondo Commission. My affidavits have disappeared.
Right.
It's been found on a computer. The reference is number 82. The lady said to me, "We don't understand. We are working on affidavit number 400. This was 2 weeks ago. I went to Justice Mogoeng's office and I said to his PA, "Here it is, please check it and carry on." Last week I took it to Shamila Batoy, the head of the NPA, National Prosecuting Authority, to her office. I gave it to her PA and said, "Here's treason charges, your office is implicated, carry on." Guess what? You would think that by now my phone would be ringing off the hook. Silence. Deathly silence. Why? Why? Remember, this is not a new thing. I mean, John Foster believed Kissinger in his so-called anti-communism drive in '75, sending South African troops into Angola. But they were prohibited from entering Luanda. I mean, in December 1980, I was in Anana when Foster and Moynihan had this big spat, and relations soured totally. That morning we got the instruction to move out. Unfortunately, I had to be operated for a little problem. I couldn't go out, but that day we killed so many SWAPO terrorists. The helicopters would come flying in, depositing 30, 40 AKs at a time. They took of the terrorists which were killed. I was there. I was there. And this is what it's all about. In the end, it was all about money. Money, 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 money. I want to talk about corruption. In Gareth Nason's case, Defense Intelligence made an affidavit saying he and I were smuggling miniguns to Somalia.
Yeah.
There's no evidence. I mean, where do you come with such nonsense? Today, they're talking about PRASA. PRASA is the rail authority. They imported 12 trains, 12 locomotives, which were built in Spain. Suddenly they say, no, these trains are too tall for the South African railway lines, which is not true. It's only too tall for 10% of the trajectories, which is the same for all other of the locomotives in the South African fleet. Lucky Montana says in his affidavit, these units had run on 70,000 kilometers already. But when it goes to the courts and the Constitutional Court, there's so much political interference. The case is not heard. A political decision is made because somebody wants to steal, somebody wants to cash in on billions of rands.
Right.
Now,
Instead of just doing things the right way.
Yeah. Now, what happens is even the journalists have been co-opted. I mean, the journalist writing about it has been writing a cock and bull story. He's never had regards to the real court documents. You know, I always go back to Sam Soul. Sam Soul is the head of Amabungani, a very investigative organ. There's some clever people working there. Everybody is compromised. And I said to Sam, but Sam, listen to me. I've been told you've been compromised.
Okay, cool.
And I spelled it out to him. Sam got so upset, he broke all contact. He's not the only one. White and black journalists all over the board is working for one or other branch of intelligence services.
Right.
So
I completely believe that.
Yeah, and that is how corruption. That is how the corruption is being protected and manifest. I mean, there's a guy sitting in Parliament, Enoch Godongwana. He's got a lot to say about finance. He and his wife was implicated in pension fund fraud, where some 400 million rand disappeared from a pension fund.
Right.
And he walks around and he's in Parliament. Tito Mboweni, the current Minister of Finance, comes out fighting for e-tolls. E-tolls was exposed as the shares being held by a company called Kapsh International, of which the Guptas are the main shareholder and their friends. So why is Tito Mboweni protecting the Guptas?
To this day.
To this day.
To this day.
To this day.
Wow.
You've got a Sasol plant in St. Louis. There's a Sasol plant that was built there. It's called Lake, I can't remember what. But in any case, it's said that certain South African politicians are the main shareholders in this plant. That plant has gone something like 800% over its budget price. It employs 1,200 people. Why should South African politicians be shareholders? I mean, and it's not new.
Right. I've learned how they begin to amass wealth, because if you become a high-level South African politician, wealth is what comes with it. Because I have learned that if you go back and you look at the boards of these huge companies, banks, diamond mines, gold mines, and other various companies, that on the board of directors sit these politicians. So to protect their interest, these companies place these politicians on their boards, and this is how they begin to amass wealth.
It has been the same under the National Party. Owen Hallwood, Minister of Finance way back in the 70s and 80s, he was sitting on the board of directors of many companies. I mean, not only him, but also what is happening. Take News 24 today from Koos Becker. News 24, the new CEO, is the ex-CEO from Cyril Ramaphosa's investment company. And they bring in all their friends. And this is what happens. And what happens is, you know, South Africa, everything in this country is done by legislation. The manufacturing of toilet paper is done by legislation. So there's an act.
Oh, Lord.
There's an act that says you've got to get an export permit to export a G6 gun, which is a 155 by 52 millimeter gun that shoots 58 kilometers, that can fire a nuclear head. But it is in the same legislation under Customs Act as a creepy crawly. A creepy crawly is a gadget which they use to automatically clean swimming pools. You link it up to the water supply of the pump, and it keeps on moving and sucks up all the debris in the swimming pool. So How dangerous is a creepy crawly to be linked with the G6? It's amazing.
It makes no sense.
But it goes through. And this is, remember, people say ANC, ANC, ANC. Start with the NP. NP, because all that happened is the old stupid National Party politicians have been replaced by new stupid ANC politicians. And they all, the big thing is, remember, they're paying 20,000 Rand an hour for a prostitute. 5 hours in a night is 100,000. Yeah. $1,300.
An hour.
An hour. So, I mean, you know, Parliament was always known as a whorehouse, putting it flatly, amongst politicians. The young guys were always told, keep your zips up. That is the situation. Keep your zips up. I mean, I was in politics myself as a second-year student. I got so disillusioned, I told them to fuck off. I don't want anything to do with you. Because with 150 Rand, I arranged in 1979 a national congress for the youth of the National Party, the young politicians. I had so many sponsors. I only had to spend 150 Rand. After the conference, I gave it all, threw it all back in their faces. I said, I'm not dealing with such low-life people in my life ever again. Unfortunately, those low-life people still interfere in my life until today. All my communications are being intercepted illegally. I mentioned this guy's name, Willie Lotter. Willie Lotter is a far right-wing imbecile. Willie Lotter is the head of Israel Vision. Willie Lotter was caught in 1999 with 11 tons of gold concentrate. He was the old gold smuggler for the National Party. Sean Abrams at the National Prosecuting Authority made him his private source, so he was never prosecuted. Today he's working for the State Security Agency, the Special Operations Division. And he's been talking so much nonsense. And all he's been doing the whole time is saying, Johan Erasmus is Boerema. Man, don't insult me. I don't have time for such nonsense. But what he's been doing is, whatever good standing I have amongst the black politicians, they interfere all the time. In 2014, there was supposed to be a settlement between me and Armscor for 75 million Rand. Mojo Motau, the chairperson then, and Mojo Motau is a very incompetent idiot. He was put there by Thabo Mbeki as the head of Defense Intelligence. At that stage, in 2014, he was the chairperson of Armscor. They stole the 75 million by creating false accounts in my name, my company's name, and drawing the money out, and nothing's being done. And Absa Merchant Bank had supplied the funds to Armscor. Since then, Armscor have come and said, I owe them over 6.2 million on VAT money I received. I never received any VAT payment from them. But they went to court in chambers. A judge who comes from Gildenhuys Machila, who was one of their attorneys, is now a judge. He gave them a judgment in chambers. I said, but
against you.
I've written to them and say, listen, you've never served anything on me. No, you must go to court. I must go to court when they've stolen all my money. You know what? It's time for the Star Chamber to rise. You know the Star Chamber? Go and Google it. That's all I can say, because the corruption is so pervasive in this country.
That is insane.
Yes, but this is what I've got to live with every day.
That is just...
this is what I've got to live with. And believe me, they are so arrogant to say they've got a judgment against me. They've got a... And I've said to them, bring your judgment any day. Bring it. Do you think they're doing it? And it doesn't matter who I speak to in this country, from whatever position, They are hiding everything away. They are. If there's look,
So
I'm not arrogant.
You get the judgment. I mean, you are going to settle with Arms Corps, and who created the accounts in your name and stole the money?
Mojo Motal and his friends at Arms Corps. Because you see what happens is
So
the
Arms
banks are
Corps.
sucked. Yeah.
Right. I thought
The-
I was not hearing that correctly.
Yeah. Because
What
the banks are sucking up to them. Listen to me. Arms Corps, when I walked in there and sat in a little sitting room, I said to them, listen guys, I would like to have a copy of the tape recordings of this conversation. You should have seen the consternation. Whenever you go there, everything is filmed, everything is taped. And it's not black, it's white. It's white, it's white,
Right.
it's white. Let me tell you this. South Africa built the G5 gun, which is a 155 millimeter by 39 millimeter at that stage. It could fire 22 kilometers. It was a gun with its own motor fitted to it, so that once a gun is placed in its embankment, you could maneuver it with its own motor to have it exactly where you wanted to fire. This was developed by Bull from Canada, was later assassinated by the Mossad, because Bull was involved in building the super gun for Saddam Hussein. But the South African government had bought an island. Listen to this. Had bought an island somewhere in the Caribbean where all the tests was done with the G5, because the G5 was then painted yellow and then shipped to South Africa as farming equipment. Now, nobody can answer to this day what happened to that island. Who took hold of that island? Who sold it? Where did the money go? A lot of secrecy, isn't it? So
Right.
corruption is not new. The corruption is not new.
I do know that. I wanted to ask you
Ask.
your thought on so of course we know that the Chinese are there, that they have their own police stations, they've built their own housing for their people, and I have been told that they not only are they not required to pay taxes, but that they are not subject to the BBE laws. Is that true? And I mean, what if it is true? I mean, what do you think about this?
Okay, first of all, this is not publicly divulged at this stage. There's 13 Chinese police stations in the country. The last one was built end of last year in Port Elizabeth with the agreement of Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, what has happened always, the Chinese would always have lots of money in their houses, in some cases millions of rand, and then these policemen would come around, do a raid, and then steal the money. So the Chinese were looking for their own protection. Perhaps it would be a good thing if the Chinese take further interest in South Africa, because there is a total lack of discipline. You've seen last week in Johannesburg how the police were running away for foreigners who attacked them.
Yeah, the Chinese aren't going to take that very much of that.
The Chinese not going to take nonsense. So I would welcome the Chinese in that regard, because really, the white, I was laying charges with various police stations. The white policeman would then go to his locker to go and fetch a stapler with staples, because there wasn't any inside of the police station. I mean, he had to have his own stationery to do his work. What nonsense is this? What nonsense is this?
Yeah. I just find it crazy that the Chinese are able to have their own police stations, and that they do not have to abide by the BBEE laws, yet, there is no protection, in the rural areas anymore because of the commanders being disbanded, which is a huge problem. That that protection was taken away and nothing was put into place. Yet the Chinese are able to have their own police station and to protect their own interests, right? But there's nothing being done to protect the farmers in the rural area. I think that's horrible.
It's about one thing, Brandy. It's about money. Money.
And they have a lot of it.
I've been in an investigation in the 1990s, early 2000s in the Northwest, whereby the one company made an affidavit saying they were paying the ANC regional office 800,000 Rand a month to pay their salaries and wages, so they could get contracts. Big in Africa. Now let's call them by names. Under Francois Swart at that stage. They were getting multi millions of contracts. And everything they touched wasn't gold.
Like Bethesda.
Yeah, it wasn't gold. It all turned out to shit. Because the houses they built were crappy. They were falling apart. And money was wasted on a big scale. And guess who was the main architect? Thabo Mbeki. I mean, there's been writings to say state capture started with Mandela. It accelerated with Mbeki, and it came full circle with Zuma.
Yeah. I've actually been reading a lot into that, that people say that Zuma will go down as the person that just did the most damage, to his own party, turning everyone against each other, and to South Africa,
And what did Zuma say to them? You think I'm going down alone?
No, and that's why this whole testimony was a sham. I even knew that, and I'm not even a South African. I said, this is a waste of time and a waste of money. No one is going to speak against him because he's sitting there so smug, because he's looking at them and they know if I'm going, you're going with me.
He outed Siphiwe Nyanda, the former head of the South African Defence Force, who was put there by Thabo Mbeki. Siphiwe Nyanda was a spy from time to time for South African forces for money or to out some of his comrades. He can take Zuma to court. Zuma will mess him up. 140 love, believe you me. And the big problem is, where are people saying, I'm spending R1 billion a year by doing good? There's a parable in the Bible about the poor widow who brought her tithe to the priests. And Jesus said, yeah, she bought everything she could. The rich gave what they could because they had too much to give. And this is the problem. Doesn't matter how much you're putting back into the community. The community is sitting on its asses and they want a little money. That was what was said in court in front of me. Not once, not twice, not thrice. A little money. We want the government to help us. The foreigners in this country get off their asses and they work. Right?
Right.
The locals, they get BE houses. What do? They sell the key of the house to a Nigerian or another foreigner. Indian families.
It's an example of the government having too much, having their hands in too much, and it actually hinders the people and hurts the people more than it helps to just keep giving.
But Brandy, the situation is, South Africa has always been a country of spectators. The activists were in the ANC. Once they got into power, they all got a bond, they all got something. They all became spectators.
Right.
Instead of being activists against poverty, they're all standing back. And don't come to me with all this fancy schmancy arguments, and they all go to these conferences. It all amounts to nothing.
For what?
It all amounts to nothing. And now I'm going to say something that's going to make people sit up in their chairs. President Trump, his election as president is a correction on the post-war, on the post-Second World War situation pertaining to this bleeding heart liberalism, which is actually a front for corruption. And that's why he will be elected again with a bigger majority. And remember,
yes, I believe that too.
When we go back to the Democrats have moved all the production offshore because it's only to the benefit of certain people. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton is implicated in 24 trillion US dollars going missing, ending up with Muammar Gaddafi. That's another story for another day. But the fact of the matter is, they have been implicated directly. So where's the investigations into them? You know, $24 trillion
I hope they're coming.
Is a big chunk of money.
I hope myself and other Americans hope that they're coming. I don't know, but some interesting things have been coming down, so we will see what happens. I wanted to ask you one more question before we go. Go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say is the deep state is at work. Make no mistake.
Yes.
Okay, ask your question.
Yeah. Just one more question before I get off of here with you. I get a lot of questions from Americans, and they wanted to know what's next on land expropriation. And they always ask, what do you think is going to happen if they begin taking the land? And, you know, I always say, I don't know for sure, but if they start trying to take this land like this, it is going to be bad. It's going to be very bad. It's going to be another Zimbabwe. I believe on a larger scale. Your take. Do you believe that they're going to continue moving forward with this and do even more damage to the country?
Brandy, the answer is yes. They are going to go forward, and you know why? It's about greed. Because they change the law, they have the majority, they don't have to work for anything. As I said to them, you want land, can you eat the sand? Can you eat the sand? You really don't want the land.